The year is 718 AD. The Iberian Peninsula is entirely occupied by the Arab and Berber Muslim armies. Well, not entirely. One small territory of indomitable Visigoths still holds out against the invaders, and life is not easy for the Berber governor's troops who garrison northern Spain. The opening narration of the classic Asterix stories is oddly fitting to introduce the early phases of the Spanish, or more precisely, Iberian Reconquista. As the name suggests, this centuries-long process encompassed the reconquest of Iberian lands which had been swiftly occupied by Arab and Berber Muslim armies following the Battle of Guadalete in 711 AD. The Reconquista pitted the Spanish Christian kingdoms originating in the north of the peninsula against their Muslim rivals, a political and religious clash which took on the characteristics of a crusade. However, these 7 centuries of Iberian history were also punctuated by long periods of relative peace, flourishing trade, and cultural exchange between Christian and Muslim states. When hostilities did erupt, they were characterized by low-intensity conflict, raiding expeditions, ambushes, and sieges, but also several decisive pitched battles. In our new series, we will cover the major turning points of the Reconquista until its culmination with the conquest of Granada in 1492, at the hands of the Reyes Católicos Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon. Following the Muslim victory at the Battle of Guadalete in July 711, the invading Umayyad general Tariq ibn Ziyad quickly evicted the armies of the Visigothic kingdom from modern-day western Andalusia, pursuing their remnants to the north, and seized the capital of Toledo along the way. In 712, Tariq's forces were reinforced by a new army of 18,000 troops led by his superior Musa ibn Nusayr, the Umayyad governor of North Africa. Musa headed towards Toledo too, but stopped along the way to lay siege to the city of Merida. From there, he dispatched his son, Abdelaziz, in a campaign to occupy central and eastern Andalusia. Merida fell in June of 712, allowing Musa to join Tariq in Toledo. The two commanders then headed northeastwards, besieging Zaragoza, before parting ways again. Tariq pushed towards the coast of modern-day Catalonia, while Musa took care of the northern coastal regions of Iberia. By the autumn of 714, most of the peninsula was under Umayyad control. The Iberian Peninsula would now be known as the Emirate of Cordoba, after their capital, or alternatively as Al-Andalus. The spectacularly successful conquerors Tariq and Musa were recalled to Damascus, where the new Caliph Suleiman rewarded them with embezzlement charges and a sentence of death, later commuted to the payment of a massive fine. Musa's governorship over Spain was handed down to his son Abdelaziz, who took as wife Egolona, the widow of Roderick, the last Visigothic king. This marriage started a long tradition of unions between Muslim leaders and local noblewomen, a tactic aimed at establishing legitimate and stable rule over the conquered populations. Abdelaziz's emirate was anything but stable, however, as he was assassinated sometime between 715 and 718. His successors, Al-Hur, Al-Sam, and later Anbassa, consolidated power over Al-Andalus with campaigns in northeastern Spain by 726, but failed to subdue an early rebellious outbreak in modern-day Asturias. At the center of this rebellion was a Visigothic nobleman of uncertain origin called Pelagius. According to the Chronicle of Alfonso III, written in the 880s, Pelagius was the son of Duke Favillo. The Codex Vigilanus, completed in the early 970s, describes Pelagius as the son of Vermudo, nephew of King Roderick. In any case, it appears that this leader was descended from a royal bloodline, making him a legitimate candidate to retake the throne in Toledo. The Chronicle of Alfonso also sheds some light on the origins of Pelagius's rebellion. Apparently, the governor of the Asturian region, Uthman ibn Naisa, had fallen in love with Ermesinda, the sister of Pelagius. Uthman forced Ermesinda into marriage, invoking the ire of her brother. In a more recent interpretation, Pelagius decided to rebel after Muslim authorities had drastically increased the tributes imposed on the Christian population. Whether Uthman had messed with his sister or his tax return, the end result was the same. Pelagius retreated into the mountains of Asturias, mobilizing around him hundreds of refugees from southern Spain, including many veterans of Guadalete. From their secure bases, the rebels moved to assault the Umayyad garrisons in the region, putting Uthman in a difficult spot. From his capital in Cordoba, the Umayyad Emir al-Hur came to the rescue, ordering military commander al-Qama to march north and quash the uprising. This set the stage for the battle widely acknowledged as the starting point of the Reconquista, Covadonga. The exact year of this engagement is unknown, with most scholars agreeing on 718. In that year, the arrival of al-Qama's troops and a series of small defeats prompted Pelagius to establish a stronghold on Mount Useva in the Picos de Europa range. The rebels and the Umayyads eventually squared off in the locality of Covadonga. According to the Chronicle of Alfonso III, Pelagius and 300 rebels defended a narrow gorge against waves of enemies, killing 125,000 of them. This description sounds suspiciously similar to another tale of resistance against all odds, but this is Asturias, not Sparta. More realistically, the Asturian rebels may have fielded some 500 troops against 2,000 under al-Qama. The Umayyad commander initially offered terms of surrender, which Pelagius refused. The rebels did position themselves at the bottom of the narrow gorge, thus preventing the risk of a large frontal assault. Al-Qama's infantry thus moved forward through the narrow pass, constantly harassed and whittled down by the launch of arrows, rocks, and other projectiles from both sides. The Umayyads suffered heavy casualties but pushed forward. Eventually, their resolve was broken by a sudden attack launched against the rearguard of their column. Al-Qama was killed in the assault, further eroding the morale of his troops. The Muslim column then abandoned the area, fleeing across the Picos de Europa towards Mount Subiedes. Their plight was not over, though, as a landslide exacted yet more casualties on the invading force, a fact that was promptly attributed to divine intervention by Christian chroniclers. Following the defeat at Covadonga, Muslim rulers decided not to invest more resources and troops in evicting Christian rebels from the Asturian mountains, preferring to consolidate their rule over more affluent regions in Iberia. The Umayyad governor Uthman went as far as abandoning the regional capital of Gijón, relocating to the safer environment of the central Meseta, the plains of central and northern Spain. As Uthman and his forces retreated southwards, they suffered another ambush at Olalius, in which the governor lost his life. The victory on the Picos de Europa and the subsequent flight of the Umayyads allowed Pelagius and his followers to establish a small Asturian kingdom, a Christian state from which to challenge the might of the Emirate of Al-Andalus. Pelagius died in 737, and he was succeeded by his son Favila. Favila's reign lasted only 2 years, and ended with him dying without heirs. The throne then went to Alfonso I, son of Pedro, Duke of Cantabria, and husband to Pelagius's daughter Ermesinda. Alfonso ruled for 18 years, during which he conducted several successful raids and campaigns against the Muslim territories, pushing as far south as Avila and Segovia. The Catholic king also occupied modern-day northern Galicia and stretched his borders eastwards towards Cantabria and Vizcaya. In the following decades, the Frankish kings Pepin and Charlemagne also caused trouble for Al-Andalus over and across the Pyrenees, seizing Gerona and Barcelona. By 801, Charlemagne created the Spanish March, a strong Christian buffer zone to prevent further Muslim incursions into France. This period of Asturian and Frankish successes had been made possible by years of progressive weakness in the Umayyad ranks. The Caliphate had suffered a series of defeats in Constantinople, Toulouse and Poitiers, and its power was further drained by 2 droughts in 748 and 752. But the most impactful factor appeared to be the Berber revolt initiated in 740 in modern-day Morocco, which soon spread to Al-Andalus. The revolt was eventually quashed by Arab troops under Balj ibn Bashir, but the internecine fight had weakened the northern reaches of the Al-Andalus Emirate, thus allowing for Christian expansion. The southward drive of the Asturians was temporarily stalled by the arrival of Abd al-Rahman in 756, the first ruler of the newly independent emirate in Cordoba. Following the death of Alfonso I in 757, Abd al-Rahman put in check his successors, but did not seek to recapture lost territories in the northern half of central Meseta. The emir instead established a strong defensive system across the Central System mountain range. The Muslims brought a more aggressive strategy in the last years of the 8th century, launching devastating attacks against Galicia and even the Asturian capital, Oviedo. According to 14th century historian Ibn Itari, in 793, General Abd al-Malik returned from one such campaign with the heads of 45,000 Christians. In the second half of the 9th century, Al-Andalus was once again shaken by rebellions and internal conflict. Two Christian kings, Ordonio I and his son Alfonso III, took advantage of the situation, launching several raids into Muslim territory in support of rebel groups. For example, in 854, an army under Count Gaetan del Bierzo intervened at the Battle of Guadalete to support a Christian uprising in Toledo. Emir Muhammad I defeated the Christian armies, and in 855 attacked the province of Alava in reprisal. Muhammad was repulsed, and his incursion prompted King Ordonio to encroach on the fortresses in the Upper March. This was the Emirate's frontier territory in northeastern Spain, governed by the Banu Qasi, a dynasty of Visigothic aristocrats who had converted to Islam. Ordonio's strategy led to the Battle of Mount Laturce in 859, also known as the Siege of Albelda, a fortress erected by Musa ibn Musa of the Banu Qasi. The Asturian king mobilized his troops and moved to siege the keep. The exact size of his army is unknown, but it must have been a sizable contingent, as he was later able to split it into two equally formidable corps. Musa was caught by surprise, as he had been riding into the lands of Pamplona to conduct a razzia, a raid or incursion to burn farmland and plunder riches and supplies. As soon as he learned that Albelda was under siege, Musa rushed back to help his garrison. Preferring to avoid a pitched battle on the plains around the river Iwegua, he set up camp on Mount Laturce. Ordonio realized that his own camp and siege works were now threatened by Musa, who held the higher ground. This is when he decided to split his army in two, leaving a contingent to continue the siege, while he moved the rest of his troops towards Laturce to deal with Musa. The Asturians and the Banu Qasi troops first made contact through a series of ambushes and skirmishes on the ridges of Laturce. The details are scant, but it appears that eventually the two armies squared off in a pitched battle. We only know that during the engagement, Musa himself was severely wounded. He was saved by an old ally, now fighting for the Asturians, who helped him escape. Musa's flight, however, left the Banu Qasi disorganized. Ordonio pressed his advantage and launched a decisive attack, routing the enemy and causing heavy casualties. Asturian sources claim that as many as 12,000 Muslim horsemen died in this battle, although this is most likely an exaggeration. The Christian troops then joined their compatriots in Albelda, and the now reunited army was able to subdue the fortress in 7 days. After the fall of Albelda, Ordonio ordered for its walls to be razed and its defenders to be executed. The Battle of Mount Laturce, alongside Covadonga, played a crucial part in building the lore of the Reconquista. The events in and around Albelda were transposed into the tale of the Battle of Clavijo. In this imaginary version, the battle is somehow dated back to 844, and the Christian commander is King Ramiro, Ordonio's father. But the real protagonist of this tale is Ramiro's ally, the apostle Saint James, or Santiago, riding into battle on a white horse. Ordonio's successor, Alfonso III, remembered as the Great, pursued a successful strategy of expansion, pushing the borders of his kingdom to the south up to the Douro River, repopulating the previously abandoned lands in this region. In 868, Alfonso's troops under nobleman Vimara Perez conquered Oporto. By 880, Perez, now appointed Count of Portugal, had secured, repopulated and fortified several cities south of the Douro, including Coimbra, Viseu, Lamego and Idana. Such an advance was made possible by the complicity of the Muslim governor for southern Portugal, Ibn Marwan, in open rebellion against Emir Muhammad I in Cordoba. Ibn Marwan and Alfonso III were often allies, conducting several raids or cabalgadas into Al-Andalus. Muhammad did not sit idle, however, and planned for a large-scale attack for the year 878. The emir split his forces into 3 contingents. One army, under General Warwick ibn Malik, would march into Portugal and then move northwards into Galicia. The second, under Muhammad's son Al-Mundir, would first head into modern-day Aragon and deal with the Banu Qasi, now allied with Alfonso. Having subdued them, Almandir would march westwards and join forces in León with a third army led by General Walid ibn Gamin. Warek's expedition into Portugal was only partially successful. His troops devastated the countryside, but then met the obstinate resistance of the Galician Count Hermenegild, headquartered in Coimbra. Warek put the city under siege, but after suffering heavy losses, he was forced to withdraw and abort his expedition. Almandir's mission met with a similar fate, as his main objectives of Tudela and Saragossa resisted his siege. Almandir was not demoralized, however. His highly mobile troops, consisting mainly of cavalry, could easily swing westwards towards León and attempt a pincer movement in conjunction with Walid's column. King Alfonso was well informed of the enemy troops' movements and set out to defeat Walid's army before he could join up with Almandir. Knowing that Walid was marching northwards along an ancient Roman road, the Asturian king set a masterful ambush, which would be known as the Battle of Polvararia. The Roman road that the Andalusians followed first crossed over the river Esla at Arco de la Polvarosa and later over the river Orbigo at Santa Cristina. The stretch of road in between the two bridges was squashed between woodland to the west and the Esla to the east. Alfonso's troops lay in waiting in the woods. After the bulk of Walid's troops had crossed at Arco, and before they could reach Santa Cristina, Alfonso sprung his trap. The wings of his formation surged forward, seizing both bridges. Then the Asturian centre smashed into the Andalusian column, still moving along the Roman road. Walid suffered heavy casualties, perhaps as high as 13,000 men. His vanguard and rearguard managed to escape the ambush, which ultimately proved counterproductive. The fleeing soldiers brought news of the disaster at Polvararia to Almandir, who was still marching towards León from Aragon. Disheartened by the defeat, the emir's son decided to swing back eastwards. On the other hand, Alfonso was emboldened by the victory on the Esla and launched his army in pursuit of the Andalusians. His cavalry caught up with the retreating army in the valley of Valdemoro. There are scant details on the ensuing battle, save that the Asturian horse charged at the Andalusians down the slopes overlooking the valley, thus crashing into their enemy with great momentum. Almandir was able to escape the attack, but he had to leave behind most of his army. In a span of weeks, King Alfonso III and his allies had decisively beaten back 3 Andalusian armies. According to the 12th century Chronica Nairensis, in 877, Emir Muhammad sent ambassadors to Alfonso to negotiate a 3-year peace, an unprecedented event thus far in the history of the Asturian-Andalusian relations. This treaty marked the rise of the thus far small and relatively weak Asturian kingdom as a military power on par with the Emirate in Córdoba. Until his death in December 910, Alfonso III would be able to expand further and consolidate his holdings in the south, in Castile and in the city of León. That's where Alfonso's eldest son, Garcia I, moved his capital, becoming the first king of León. This is episode 1 of our member and Patreon exclusive series on the Iberian Reconquista. Our kind members and patrons received 15 episodes on this long-term series of wars that created the kingdoms of Spain and Portugal, launching their colonial empires in the process and changing the fate of Europe and beyond. All major battles are covered, among them Las Navas de Tolosa, Sagrajas, Zaragoza, Lisbon, Alarcos, Granada, and even more on the way in the long video. If you want to see the rest of the series on the Reconquista, as well as more than 200 other exclusive videos, including the Persian Wars, Punic Wars, Spanish War of Succession, Eastern, North African, Italian and Pacific fronts of World War II, and more, as well as get access to our exclusive Discord, see our schedule, and get early access to all videos, join the ranks of our patrons and YouTube members via the links in the description and pinned comment. Thanks to our supporters for allowing us to continue doing our dream job. The epic struggle for control of the Iberian Peninsula will continue over the following centuries and over our future videos. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next episodes on the Reconquista, in which we will cover further pivotal battles, as well as the rise of the legendary knight Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, known as El Cid Campeador. Recently we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.